Joining us by telephone, we have Lanny Davis, the Democratic political and really crisis consultant, one-time special counsel to Bill Clinton, and waiting patiently with yet more perspectives for us from Newsmax New York, our friend Rick Unger, the senior political contributor, Forbes.com, and co-host of Steele and Unger on Sirius XM Radio. So, Lanny, we thank you for joining us by phone today. You've been busy. You've been writing columns about the Rick Perry indictment. From your position, Lanny, is it pure politics?
Well, first of all, it's nice to be on with Rick Unger talking about Rick Perry. And I think neither Rick Unger nor myself would vote for Rick Perry, but I have a feeling we both think this indictment is ridiculous.
Yeah. What about it, Rick Unger?
Yeah, Lanny, listen, one thing about Lanny Davis, he is one heck of a great lawyer. So he knows that there are some elements to a crime that you have to be able to prove. One of them is called the mens rea, the criminal intent. I think they're going to have a very, very hard time making that case on this one.
Lanny, in your column, which I believe you wrote for The Hill, thehill.com, you said this, quote, "McCarthyism is McCarthyism. Accusation and innuendo and investigations used as surrogates for fact and truth and due process, whether by the left or the right." So bringing up the M word, McCarthyism, that's pretty industrial strength, Lanny.
Well, that was the reason that I wrote the column. My father taught me about innuendo in the absence of fact, ruining lives and indeed threatening lives, because McCarthy literally ruined lives. And so this reminded me in reading Texas Democrats actually calling upon Perry to resign because of an indictment, which is easy to get as a ham sandwich. It means nothing. It's an accusation by a prosecutor, in this case, a prosecutor who doesn't even understand the difference between politics and the law. And to have people assume guilt or even wrongdoing is just one of the things that made me think of McCarthyism.
Rick, I have a question again for you. I wanted to ask, so Perry earlier today on the radio called this a process being prostituted. In your opinion, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, the point that Lanny just made about Democrats calling for his resignation certainly make it appear that way, even if it wasn't intended initially to be that way. Look, if you're going to be serious about this sort of thing, you don't just step up as the Democratic Party in Texas and go, okay, you've been indicted, now you have to quit. That's ridiculous. Now, I'll also point out that I thought it was equally ridiculous for Governor Perry to insist that that district attorney, who she had been convicted of a crime, he probably should not have called for her resignation. That should probably be taken care of in the voting box. But what you're getting into is something that Lanny, and I highly recommend that people read Lanny's article that he published yesterday. I read it, and it was spot on. This is not the way our democracy is intended to work. This is just not a good thing. If Governor Perry did commit a crime, and as Lanny and I have both said, it's highly unlikely that that case can or will be made, then that's one thing, let the process go forward. But you don't just start screaming for resignation because somebody's indicted.
Well, Lanny, the whys and wherefores of a veto, though Rick takes exception to Governor Perry calling for the Travis County attorney to resign, I believe because he vetoed the millions of dollars that were being appropriated for the public integrity unit that she was supposed to run. Rick Unger may not agree with that politically, but a governor has a right to sit down and veto expenditures that he believes are not being made in the public interest.
In fact, I would probably vote against Rick Perry for 100 reasons, not the least of which is what he stands for. But I find suspicious that he vetoes money for a public integrity unit rather than, I think, legitimately calling for the lady's resignation because she was convicted of drunk driving. But that's a debate we have in the political marketplace. Voters get to decide whether I'm right or wrong, not courts and certainly not prosecutors. And this particular office has a long history of what seems to be politically motivated prosecutions. The whole thing stinks, but what I find worst of all is the silence of civil libertarian Democrats who allow politics to presume guilt because of an indictment, which is a meaningless, one-sided accusation by a prosecutor. Most people hear the word indictment and they think that that's equal to conviction. It's exactly the opposite, and it defies the presumption of innocence embedded in our Constitution.
Lanny, what are your thoughts on this whole situation being part of a cover-up designed to derail an investigation of cancer research this cancer research funding program?
Who knows? Rick and I share much in common. The one thing that we don't try to do is psychoanalyze politicians. Let the therapists and the psychiatrists figure out motivation. All I know is that I don't particularly agree with Rick Perry. I'd vote against him if I had a chance, but I wouldn't indict him.
Let's get back to Rick Unger, because I think I may have detected a rare moment of disagreement, and maybe this is a chance to clarify. Rick Unger, you took exception with Rick Perry calling for the resignation of the Travis County attorney. As we were talking a little bit earlier, the video of that attorney, unfortunately in a state of inebriation, challenging the peace officers who were processing her as she was being incarcerated, all that's out in the public record. Now, I think Lanny just said he was more comfortable with Rick calling for, with Governor Perry calling for her resignation. You don't think the governor has the right to do that?
No, I just to be clear, it's not that I have a problem with the governor stating his perspective on the matter. I don't have a problem with him calling for it. I think we should have a problem when a governor doesn't get what he wants and uses his line item veto as a means of trying to accomplish it. I don't think it was necessarily criminal. I don't think it necessarily required an indictment, and I seriously doubt it will lead to a conviction. But no, you know, this isn't the best way to go about doing this.
We have to call it right there. Gentlemen, we thank you for your time on this question, and America's Forum is calling right back.